Welcome to How Do They Afford That, the podcast that peeks into the financial lives of everyday Australians. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm a writer and the co-host of the podcast Fear and Greed Business News. As always, I'm with Canna Campbell, financial planner, founder of Sugar Mama TV, the financial literacy platform on YouTube and podcasts and books and Instagram and more. Canna, what savings hack? We love to start off with a savings hack. It gets us really kind of going on a good note.
And we love to hear from everyone what their savings hack might be. Sharing is caring.
Yes. Have you got a good one for us today?
I certainly do. And it was one that I found out from someone else. And then I didn't think anything of it. Then I came across it while shopping on catch.com.au. And it's called OnePass. Have you heard of it?
I have, actually.
It's brilliant. I haven't signed up, I will admit, but it's very attractive.
It's one of those ones, it's like a loyalty kind of program that covers multiple kind of retailers with free shipping and all of that.
Yeah. And you get 5 times, I think, flyby points.
What?
Yes. Now, the reason why it came to my attention is I was on catch.com, which is actually a savings hack in itself because you can buy things at heavily discounted prices. But they had 2 prices. So I was buying my daughter's these dresses, and there was the standard Catch customer price, but then there was the OnePass price. And the OnePass price was significantly cheaper than the discounted Catch price. Plus, you got free shipping. And as I realize now, you get 5 times frequent flyer points and a whole range of other benefits. They could partner with Disney Plus, so you can, if you want, subscribe to that. And I believe it's as little as $40 a year. And you can actually try it through a 30-day free trial.
Really?
And obviously you need to be doing a certain amount of shopping to justify the free shipping. But, I mean, if you're someone who collects flyby points, which I know you are, and I am now a flyby member, and I love collecting my points every time they put Bunnings and Officeworks. I have it saved on my phone.
How much shopping do you do at Officeworks? You mention it all the time.
I spend a lot of time. I actually even took my dogs in there the other day.
Are you allowed to?
I don't know, but the manager could see I was struggling a bit because I had one dog having a meltdown. That was Giuseppe. And then the other one was just so excited about going into Officeworks. She was like charging in. Plus I had 3 children also running in different directions. The manager actually came up to me and said, "Do you want to bring them inside?" And I said, "Yes." Because also I forgot I didn't have a lead for one of them. So I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. Anyway, she was fine. She's like, "Bring them in, it's fine." So Giuseppe and Peppy got a beautiful tour around Officeworks Bondi Junction. I hope the manager doesn't get in trouble for this. But they were very well behaved. But to answer your question, I spent a lot of time in Officeworks because I have 3 children who love arts and crafts. And my children are really bad at putting the lids on the pens, even though I go psycho at them because they dry out really quickly. And Rocco's always got this new project he wants to do, and he's quite like me, he's quite into office organisation. And as I've shared with my previous episodes, I use Posca pens, and Officeworks stock Posca pens at the best prices. But there's always something. You've got to buy ink cartridges, you've got to buy paper, notepads, pens. Tom's always pinching my pens, which I never get back. There's always something, you know. Officeworks is great.
I should just clarify that Officeworks is not a sponsor of this podcast.
But they are more than welcome.
They certainly are. They've got a very enthusiastic advocate in Canna Campbell. Okay, let's get on with this because we're starting out a new year. We're, a couple of weeks in. The cost of living situation has not really changed much, has it? It's
not at all.
Everything's still expensive, really. I mean, we could just say that as a blanket kind of cover-all for kind of mortgage repayments and rent and groceries and electricity and gas and everything. It's just, and in some cases, prices are still rising. I mean, insurance premiums don't seem to be going backwards. And it really kind of begs the question, what can we actually do? And now's a good time to kind of take stock and go, all right, how do we actually deal with the cost of living crisis when it is clearly not just a temporary, short-lived thing?
Well, the first thing is actually your mindset. We've got to stop. Your eyes roll again.
No,
listen to me. I've got a really valid point here. If we continue on calling this a cost of living crisis, that does not make us feel good. We need to accept this for what it is. And I call it the cost of living challenge. I believe, and I may sound very naive and foolish and ignorant. And I'm not someone who's sitting on my high horse because I get how hard it is and how tight it is. You know, I have similar commitments, and my household is very similar to every other household. Yeah. But if we look at this as a challenge, it changes our mindset. You know, the word crisis keeps us stuck in a place of fear and stress and anxiety and panic. But if we call it a challenge, we look at it differently, and we can look at an opportunity to grow and to gain something from this. And I like to look at a blessing in disguise, and there's something behind this that's going to benefit us. So if you look at it as like a challenge, you think, okay, well, I'm going to learn to cut the wastage out of my budget. I'm going to learn more about money. I'm going to learn more about my cash flow and how to manage it responsibly. I'm going to learn more about how to save money, and I'm going to get better at saving money and better at budgeting. And I'm going to become more maybe resourceful with what I have. Instead of having to call someone up to come over and fix something, I'm going to learn how to fix it myself. And even myself and Tom, when things have broken in our house, we'd normally call someone to fix it. We've actually been finding ourselves jumping on YouTube and watching tutorials.
Really?
It's actually saved us quite a lot of money to call a handyman out or someone to come and fix, you know, a particular gadget where you can actually access something like a tutorial online is really helpful. So there is an opportunity for us to, I think, grow and gain new skills that we wouldn't have before because we're too busy, or it was just a thing where we could throw money at the problem. That's not happening anymore. And also, if I go really deep, just for 1 second, please bear with me.
Okay.
I know you.
I'm bearing with.
It's also like we're also cutting down wastage in our life, which is also good for the planet as well. You know, I'm a lot more careful in how I spend money. I, think about the long-term usage and wear of something, or whether I'm going to make sure whether I can buy it secondhand, perhaps, which is obviously always far more responsible as well as saving money. So I think there are lots of things. There's a lot of goodness to come from this tough time, and that's where true growth comes from, is those hard times.
You say that you've been getting online and watching YouTube tutorials. What have you actually fixed using YouTube tutorials?
The dryer before it broke.
So that was unsuccessful?
It actually fixed it for a couple of months. A good 6 months, actually, to be honest.
Is there the potential that you were the one that actually caused its ultimate demise?
No. Okay. No. We use our washing line a lot. It wasn't like an overuse or like excessive use.
No, I'm suggesting that it was in fact the temporary fix that you did actually ended its life.
I actually have been doing my backyard. I've been doing a lot of gardening myself, and a lot of heavy lifting gardening, to the point where Tom actually has been videoing me and putting it on social media, me carrying these big, heavy bags of pebbles and planting them around our garden. I've also been sourcing succulents, in particular frangipani trees as well, online through Gumtree, instead of just, getting someone like a landscape gardener to come in. I've done it all myself. I'm almost finished. I'm so proud of how our backyard is looking. It does look a little bit DIY project-ish, I will admit, but I've saved a lot of money by doing it myself. And every weekend I do a little bit what I can. It's very therapeutic as well.
There's a certain irony in using Gumtree to source trees other than gums, isn't there? Like getting frangipanis and others. It's like, this feels slightly wrong.
But they're thriving, and because I'm going tutorials about how to fix dying plants. And I have to say, we'll have a massive thank you to Instagram, because I had a bougainvillea which I was about to get rid of. I put it on Instagram. Does anyone have any tips to help bring this back to life? And I got an influx of advice. And I have a thriving hot pink bougainvillea growing up the wall of my house, thanks to putting it out there. I would have probably chucked it out and bought a new one.
We've taken quite the detour.
Sorry, I know, I always do that.
It's worth it. I'm interested. Now I want to see your garden. I want to see if it really is as DIY as you say.
Tom bagged the crap out of me, and that's why he refused to help me and just sat on the sofa and filmed me giggling away at me. But he actually said to me, you know what? I finally get it. It actually looks really good.
Gardening is really satisfying, isn't it?
Oh, weeding? Oh, I love it when you pull out a weed and you see all the deep roots that just come.
Well, Sian and I say kind of like, when did we become those people that suddenly looked forward to gardening on the weekend? Like, we always thought, well, she was young and cool. I was young. I've never been cool. But like, when did we become those kind of people that are like, oh yeah, let's get out in the garden this weekend. There's so many weeds and we're going to kind of, let's put some mulch down and can't wait to mow. And that is now the highlight of my week. If I get to do some mowing, I'm like, I'm satisfied now.
But these are like, but that sense of pride and satisfaction, I think that they're underestimated.
Yeah, I think you're right. And really, they're free. Like that, I mean, that's a very good kind of cheap activity that gives you a high. It feels like I'm making a desperate attempt to kind of link this back to the subject of today's kind of podcast because we are going a long way off topic. Let's go through a few of those things. I listed a bunch of them at the top of the show in terms of what has been going up, the cost of kind of mortgage repayments and groceries and all these. I want to go through a few of those one by one. Obviously now very quickly because you took up a lot of time talking about your garden.
My hot pink bougainvillea.
Yes, your hot pink bougainvillea, which is just... Okay, we're going to need to see pictures now and go through a few of these things and see how we might be able to offset or perhaps reduce the cost a little to deal with the cost of living challenge that we are in at the moment. Mortgage repayments. I'm assuming, based on what we have discussed in previous episodes, that now is a good time to either call your bank or to contact your mortgage broker.
Absolutely. See what better deals are out there. Loyalty tax is expensive. As I've explained previously, a new customer is of more value to the bank than an existing customer. So don't get sucked in and be a victim. And
you've got nothing to lose as well by doing it. What's the worst I can say? No. There's no reduction for you. I mean...
Or you may find out that you're actually on a really great competitive rate.
Which will be satisfying as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's worth the cost of a phone call. It's probably the easiest thing that you can do on this list. Rent. Very hard to do anything about that, isn't it?
I disagree.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, once again, I made an assumption that was incorrect, but I like this. This is good.
Look, we've spoken about the cost of property and holding property, and I really talked about the cost of, when you're in between tenants. It's painful because you've got to fund those mortgage repayments without the assistance of rental income coming in when you're in between tenants. And then you've got to pay marketing expenses and you've got to pay, that letting fee to your property manager. It's very expensive. It can eat up almost a month's worth of rent very, very quickly. Heaven forbid if you have a property that's empty for a couple of months, that becomes really expensive. But if you can find a way of communicating to your property manager or your landlord, look, I'll sign a long lease, or as part of my lease, we reduce it, but I take care of doing this, this, and that. I know people who are on great deals with their landlords because they are adding value to the property. They're taking really great care and they're treating that property like it's their own home.
Yeah.
And the landlord is very happy. It's a bit of a win-win situation for everyone, because they've got someone that they know and trust that's taking really good, responsible care of the property, and they're doing little things here and there to add value to the property, but also those things that the landlord isn't having to pay out for. For example, Tom and I have a property, and this guy actually rents it out on Airbnb. So we've agreed on particular terms and conditions, but because he's agreed to be very hands-on with the property, when the fan breaks or there's something wrong with the air conditioning or the oven's not working, he doesn't call us to annoy us or even annoy the property manager. He goes in and fixes it himself. So it does actually mean it's very hands-off. So open up the space for those types of conversations. And I know in the past when I've been working with tenants and they've said, look, would you be open to a long lease? That takes stress and pressure off my shoulders because I don't ever have to worry about, oh my gosh, they're moving out with short notice. It's Easter time. A lot of people are going away, or it's Christmas time. No one thinks about moving. And the house, or the property, I should say, is going to be empty for 3 weeks with me funding the difference out of my own cash flow.
Okay. All right. Look, so we've covered their rent, we've covered mortgage repayments, and we've covered the kind of mindset changes that you need to deal with, the overall kind of cost of living environment that we're in at the moment. But we're going to take a very quick break and come back in a second because I want to talk to you about groceries, because it just seems like that is every week getting more and more expensive. So I'm sure that you've got some good ideas. Canna, we are talking about the cost of living crisis, or as you corrected me earlier on, the cost of living challenge. It's all about the mindset that you take into this. Groceries. Every time you go into the supermarket, it feels like it just costs that little bit more now. And you see kind of pictures online of kind of what you're able to pay for a basket full of groceries 10 years ago, and you look at the same now, and it's almost unrecognizable. It is quite extraordinary. How can we reduce the pressure here?
Well, there are lots of things we can do to actually save money at the supermarket. You would have noticed that Woolworths and Coles actually have a lot of their own sort of in-house brands or home brands.
Yep.
And they can sometimes be up to 40% cheaper. In particular, a loaf of bread at Woolworths, the home brand, versus, say, a mainstream brand, the savings are quite substantial. Also, things like buying from the odd bunch. You're supporting, obviously, the farmers, and those fruit and vegetables are perfectly fine, but they're significantly discounted because they don't look picture perfect. Then, obviously, shopping in season, knowing what fruit and vegetables are in season and an abundance of, and some of those things you can actually be frozen and bought in bulk. Then there's places like Costco, where you can potentially go with family members or friends and buy in bulk, and then obviously split the cost between you. There are lots of different things you can do. Also, a great hack, which was given to me by Susie Burrell, which I've shared before, and that is to have set food on set days of the week so that you know exactly what you buy, when something's on sale, whether to grab that or not. Eating simply. There's lots and lots of different things out there. Learning to cook with more rice, legumes, lentils. There's, things that actually fill you up properly rather than, the $2.50 packet of Tim Tams. So there are so many resources also online as to how to make frugal meals on a budget that are actually healthy and nutritious and filling.
Okay. We'll keep moving on because we're trying to give a fairly kind of rapid fire guide to helping with the cost of living challenge. Gas and electricity. Is this just a case of kind of shopping around? And there's comparison websites, aren't there, that you can use for this kind of thing? But I imagine the best thing to do would just be to pick up the phone.
Absolutely. And I did this during Frugal February. I called up our energy and gas provider and on the spot was able to save $45 a month by changing plans.
Wow. How long was the phone call?
Oh, it probably was on the phone for 12 minutes.
That's good.
I actually did it sitting in the car waiting for someone. So it was very efficient use of my time. But also on top of that, a lot of the, cashback websites often have promotions with energy providers where you'll get like a bonus $250 if you sign up. Now, obviously be careful, make sure that $250 is worthwhile. It's not going to end up costing you more money with your plan. But, those things can also be added incentives. And also some of those energy providers may have other special promotions on other services as well.
I suppose there's also an element of reducing usage wherever you can as well.
Exactly.
Which feels like just an old school kind of piece of advice. Turn the lights off when you leave the room.
But you've got to check if you're on one of those particular meters because not everyone is on an off-peak and on-peak meter.
Good point. So you might bust a hump turning off all of your lights and switching off all your standby power and everything. It'll make no difference.
Exactly. But if you are, yes, most definitely, that can really add up. Washing on a cold cycle, put your washing machine on before you go to bed at night and, put washing on the line first thing in the morning. And yes, it is a little bit of extra work, but those savings really can add up and make a difference. And of course, they're reducing our footprint on the planet. Petrol.
What about filling up the car? Is it just timing the cycle next to impossible?
Well, we've shared lots of great hacks around this. So there was the Petty app that someone very kindly shared with us. And then also there was the 7-Eleven Petrol Lock app as well, which is really brilliant hack. But then there's, BP Qantas Rewards as well. So the shopper dockets, knowing what day of the week is the most competitive place to get petrol, utilising public transport when you can. There are so many different things we can do out there. It's not all doom and gloom from the cost of living challenge.
One last one, insurance premiums, because they just seem to keep going up.
I sit really firm on this one because if something goes wrong, you may regret getting rid of or cutting insurance policies. And you are paying for peace of mind, and it is a positive thing that you never have to make a claim because it means nothing bad or tragic ever happened to you. But if you are finding that your premiums are getting out of hand and this is just too much, what I do recommend is get on the phone and speak to them. And there may be elements within your policy that you can afford to safely change that will reduce your premiums. For example, and no, this is not advice whatsoever, but say, for example, you have an income protection policy and it's got a 30-day waiting period. And you are someone who's been with the same employer for many, many years. You've got, say, 40 working days of sick leave accumulated. You've got 3 weeks of annual leave accumulated. You've got some service leave entitlements. Plus, you've got some emergency money set aside. You could potentially say to that insurance company, look, I think I can afford to change my waiting period from 30 days to 60 days, or 90 days is typically the sweet spot where you see the biggest reduction. What will that bring my premium down to? That might be an option rather than just going out and immediately cancelling that policy because it's too expensive. Think not twice before cancelling, think 3 or 4 times and ask questions about what options are available. Or, even changing the excess on your insurance policy, increasing it will sometimes brings down the policy. But again, make sure you factor that into your emergency money. Think it through before you make any changes and get advice if you're not quite sure. But there are options. And I have had so many people actually in this year particularly reach out to me to say, I'm so glad I listened to that episode because I took income protection out and I've actually just been diagnosed with breast cancer. Or I've had someone I know very close to me who was a client of mine that I urged to take trauma cover out, actually ended up having a brain tumor. And, so many times we had conversations about her premium for that trauma cover and I was like, stick with it, keep it, don't question it. It's important. And she had a full payout and a really big payout. And unfortunately, she's going to be perfectly fine. But this is when that moment where that insurance policy is very, very important and it belongs in your budget.
There's so many good ideas there. What about if you're really desperate? What about if you're really struggling? What assistance is out there?
There are lots and lots of different institutions, organizations, and charities out there willing to help you. So there's the National Debt Line, there's the Mobstrong Debt Line, there's the Small Business Debt Line, there's plenty of financial counselors and financial counselors that are free. You can get on the phone and speak to your bank, speak to your energy providers. You can get a plan in place. You can get government support. So the Department of Social Security, there's Centrelink. Sometimes you can get a crisis payment as well. You can also get advance payments if you're really stuck, which I don't necessarily recommend because you can end up sort of chasing your tail, but it might be a quick fix that you need desperately. There's the Salvation Army. There's St. Vincent de Paul's. There are various grants. There are so many organizations out there willing to help you, but you can't get help unless you put your hand up and ask for it. And there is absolutely no shame in saying, I'm stuck, I need help, tell me what to do. And these organizations will help you.
That seems like a really good place to leave it. And I really like what you said at the start about changing the mindset around this, that it is a cost of living challenge rather than a crisis, because also a crisis is generally something that's a little bit more kind of short-lived. And this is just, it feels like this is the new kind of reality, that everything is expensive. It is a challenge that we all have to kind of deal with and look at it that way and adjust your thinking and your mindset that way. And as we talked about, kind of now is the time to call your bank, call your mortgage broker and see what you can do about your home loan repayments. If you're renting, just because you are renting doesn't mean that you can't have that dialogue with your landlord as well about other things that you can do potentially to offset the cost of rent. Groceries, lots of good ideas there on how to try and reduce the cost of your grocery bill, because that does just seem to get more expensive every week. Gas and electricity, shopping around and kind of seeing where you can get the best deals. And they are out there. There are some good discounts on offer, particularly for new clients and to lure people kind of from one company to another, and also potentially reducing usage if you have one of those meters that does actually measure whether you are using appliances or not. Petrol, lots of apps and things that you can use to try and not just time the cycle, but just know that, hey, maybe 2 minutes detour. There's you can get 20 cents. I saw the other day it was about 3 minutes apart, and there was a 50 cents difference. It was extraordinary. And fortunately, it was in my local area, so I know to avoid that first one and always go to the second petrol station. And the difference, it was about kind of 45 or 46 cents per litre. And I thought that was incredible. And having an app that actually tells you what the price is in different areas really, really helps for that kind of thing. And insurance premiums, kind of remember the value of insurance, but don't be afraid to kind of shop around and kind of look and see where you're going to get the cover that you need at the price you can afford. Is it safe to say that?
Yes, but make sure that the policy also matches your situation, and particularly with personal insurance, you've got to be very, very careful if you've had a change in health.
Yeah, indeed. All right. And if you do need assistance is out there. You just need to remember that there is no shame in asking for help, and just put your hand up, and there are plenty of places able to assist you with that. Kanna, if people want more information from you, how do we find you?
Fastest place to get in touch is through Instagram at SugarMamaTV.
And you can hear me every day with Sean Aylmer on Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. Thank you very much for listening to How Do They Afford That? Remember to hit follow on the podcast. Please leave us a review as well. Next week, we are talking about basically if you're in the situation if you don't want to buy property but you want to get ahead financially, what are your options? It is going to be a really interesting one. Don't miss it.